and welcome to Media Lit, where we treat each piece of media like great literature. I am your host, Randy Elaine, and joining me, as always, in his Sunday best today, it's the wonderful Kris Ingersoll. Kris, how you doing today?
So good, buddy. So grateful to be here with you on a Sunday for the Podlings at Home. A little peek behind the curtain. It's not often we record on a daytime Sunday, and the vibes are good, buddy. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I've got my coffee cup ready to go. I've got a great topic, and perhaps most importantly, we have an incredible guest on the way. But before we do that, Kris,
Yeah.
we've got to do something that we've committed to in season 3. So I'm going to hand the reins over to you.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, not to keep our guest waiting, but there's just something on my heart that I have to express, and it's the beautiful Podlings. We've come here with a view of asking you to email us. We know we seems insane people because perhaps we hardly knows you. But sometimes things are so transparency, they don't need evidential proof. And we will email you if you will email with us. Of course, we don't expecting you to be as foolish as us. And of course, we prediction you say no. But it's season 3, and we just wanted to check. So the inbox is open, Podlings. Please email us at media.slash.lit@gmail.com. There's nothing we would like more than to email with you.
Kris, thank you so much for that. As you know, we have a history of loving a Love Actually reference. As a matter of fact, one of our earliest episodes on the soundtrack to the film Coyote Ugly is poised to jump into our number 2 most listened to episode slot. And that is the episode where I made the podcast proposal to you using the Love Actually cards.
Exactly right. The real ones will know. So I had to bring the Colin Firth. I'm no Colin Firth myself, but I had to bring it back for this one.
And as we know, he said yes. But enough shenanigans, enough begging for subscriptions from all of you. We are proud and honored to welcome one of our favorite guests and favorite people. It is the wonderful podcast director of the Pop Break Digital Culture Magazine and Podcast Network. It is the wonderful Alex Marcus. Alex, how you doing today?
I'm great. I am so excited. I've been looking forward to this podcast for weeks. It is the gift of my life that you're giving me.
Come on. I love the way you run through his credentials, and all I'm thinking is, yeah, all that, and he's just one of my favorite people. So glad to have you here, buddy.
Oh, absolutely. You guys are my favorite people who live in the greater Massachusetts area, at the very least.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going
thanks.
to take that as a win.
Yeah, that counts. Well, thanks to Alex, we've got a really exciting episode ahead. It's our very first time here at Media Lit discussing the fantastic show Mad Men.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait. I'm sure you're going to ask me this in a couple of minutes, but I can't contain my excitement because Mad Men is my single favorite television show of all time, but not just my favorite television show. It's my favorite thing. It's like the thing that is most important to me in culture, in my life outside of personal relationships. I love this more than I can explain. It means so much to me. It came to me at a very important moment in my life, and I grew with the show. The show gave me everything that I wanted, and it ended now so many years ago, and it still has a very fond place in my heart. So this is because Mad Men is locked in time from a time before I was podcasting. It's a rare opportunity to talk about it. So I'm very excited.
Well, to the Podlings at home, I don't know about you, but my appetite is whetted. Let's just jump right into those personal connections. Alex, tell us, and the Podlings at home, what makes Mad Men such an essential watch? And do you share it with anybody? Any particular relationships that you connect it to?
Sure. Well, it's an essential watch because it is the story of like America. It's a story of society. It's a story of becoming who you want to be and learning who you never will be. And it also is such a formally dynamic show. It takes bold experimental chances in how it constructs its narratives and how it tells its stories. It is the culmination, in my opinion, of the prestige TV era in the sense of a series being like a great novel. because it really it invests so much time into building these characters and their relationships and allows stories to play out over the course of seasons in a way that we just don't get on television anymore because shows are not allowed to run more than like 16 episodes over the course of 7 years. And so you never get the chance to build and to develop a rich and exciting relationship with these people and see those relationships pay out. This is a show that takes place over the course of a decade of storytelling, and you feel the change. It has a place. It has it's a placement in time specifically, but it also has just like I said, the ability to really pay off in a way that few shows do, and without the component that so many shows have, where we have this sort of like mystery box or it's genre heavy. It's just people living their lives in history, part of history, becoming history themselves, and also telling us so much about who we are as people. So that's why I love this show. It's incredible. It's all of the things. It's so well. When it aired, it was the funniest show on television and the best drama on television, the best directed show on television, the best written show on television, and it has an unimpeachable cast that has gone on to so many incredible things in the decade plus since it premiered. But it's incredible. I love this show so much.
Yeah, oh my gosh, 7 seasons, 92 episodes. We don't get that anymore.
No, not at all. And every season, there was towards the end, a couple of seasons you had to wait like a year and a half to get to, but for the most part, it was every year a new season of the show was coming out, and that just lets you tell stories in a way that you just don't get anymore, and which is sad. But this episode that we're going to talk about is such a great pivot point for the whole show. So I'm very excited to get into it. But you also asked like personal connections in terms of people, and I absolutely have that with this show because I started watching this show just kind of like on an island alone. No one I knew was watching it, but podcast. Speaking of podcast that I was very invested in at the time, the Bill Simmons podcast, which is kind of funny because I'm not really a sports guy at all anymore and was only loosely at the time. Yeah. But Bill Simmons was the sort of like entryway for me into like pop culture as a discussion point in the internet, his columns on ESPN.com. And then the podcast that came out of it, like it showed that you can have like an engaged, interesting conversation about media in a way that just I had not been exposed to outside of that before. Like as growing up as like a teenager, like when I used to talk about what I loved about the radio as a kid, I would say like, I don't like to listen to talk radio because that's boring and it's just like news and who cares. But I love listening when the DJs talk to each other. And you'd get it like 10 minutes in the morning. They would talk. They would do like a prank or whatever. And then they would say like, oh, this was on the TV or whatever. I'll never forget. There was like when Malcolm in the Middle came out for the first time. And there was like the episode where Bryan Cranston is standing naked at the breakfast table. And everybody was talking about it the next day on the radio.
Yes.
Like that. I loved that stuff. But there's so little of it out there. And then like Bill Simmons came along and on his podcast, that was a huge component of it. And one of the things that he used to like to do is to bring on TV critics and film critics and things like that and talk about great stuff. And two great TV critics, Tim Goodman from the San Francisco Chronicle at the time and Alan Sepinwall from the New Jersey Star Ledger at the time. They both came on the summer of 2009, I want to say, and said like, oh, like the second season of Mad Men just wrapped up and it's one of the best shows ever. And they both gave like such a really long explanation of like why it was so great. And they were excited for the third season that was going to be coming out. And I was like, oh, like these people are really interesting. And they seem to say it's like a can't miss show. It was like at the time that I was really trying to do my like education on the media that I had missed and that I was coming up in. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust their judgment. I'm going to cold buy 2 seasons of the show on DVD from Amazon. Just got the 2 season box sets. And I watched them in my basement. And like just plowed through them. It was like, this is absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like it before. And then that let me watch the 3rd season live and I loved that. And then when the 4th season came around a year later, all of my friends, I was like, you guys have to watch this show. We have to watch this together. This is huge. So my one friend in particular, I had this like internship in the city. I was living in New Jersey and I had an internship in the city. And every day I would come home at like, I would take the bus home from the city, get home like around 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I would just go to my friend's house. It was like one of my best friends from high school who was in town for the summer because we were still in college. And I would just go to his house and I would bring him the DVDs and we would just sit and we would watch every single episode of the first 3 seasons of Mad Men, and I would pause
Mhm.
and because I had watched all of the shows once, and then I watched all the shows again with all of the directors and writers' commentary tracks because it was the
Right.
incredible time of DVD extras.
Yeah.
So then I would
Yes.
come in and educate him basically on why this show was so great, and we would pause, we'd like, "Oh, see, this is where this came in." I was basically podcasting, but just for an audience of one before I was a podcaster.
Nice.
Uh, and that became like a huge kind of bonding thing for us,
Yes.
me and my friend. And then that opened up our whole friend group got really into it. And then it became huge after that. And it ended up that the people in that group that we really connected on Mad Men, we got to watch the series finale many years later together in a beautiful way where the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens had this incredible exposition, exhibit, I should say, on Mad Men that coincided with the final season of the show, where they had like props from the set, wardrobe. They had like little like scraps of paper that Matthew Weiner, the creator of the show, had like written ideas on for the pilot, and they like had it like
Mm.
framed on the side of the wall. It was crazy. So we went into the city, we explored that whole space for hours, and then we took the train ride home and we watched it in the same in at my friend's house, the same house that we had built this love of the show together many years earlier. And we watched this finale, and when the finale ended, I just cried, just like openly
Mhm.
wept, and I didn't expect it at all. And like the episode is like an emotional episode, but the ending isn't necessarily a sad ending. But I was responding to the fact that this
Mhm.
chapter in my life was ending more than anything else. And so that's how emotionally connected I am to the show and how core it is to some of my best friends who are still some of my best friends today. And now I'm excited to bring you guys into the circle.
Well, yeah, Alex, thank you so much for doing that. And as you all know, if you listen to this podcast and you've heard Alex before, he is the consummate professional. So he's actually answered all of my follow-up questions already. So I'm going to use this as a little excuse just to admit to our podlings, like part of the reason we're doing this podcast is not only Alex's love for the show, but it comes with the shocking admission that Mad Men is a pretty big blind spot for both
Mm.
Kris and myself. So, Kris, well, this is a blind spot for us. I know neither of us are totally blind to the impact this show has had. Like, what is your pre existing relationship with this show, even if it is pretty small?
I remember. So I was working for Burberry for a
Mhm.
lot of this show's run. I hadn't joined the company just yet, but my life was becoming much more concerned with like all things sartorial. I was becoming more immersed in the world of fashion, specifically like finely tailored suits. I was living in New York City
Mhm.
between 2012 and 2014, working at the Manhattan flagship store
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And Mad Men was just a huge part of the conversation. When gentlemen would come in, they would talk about the way they wanted to look and feel in their suits. Mad Men was a big part of that. So while I wasn't watching the show, of course, I was hyper aware of it. And like the
Yeah.
AMC suite in general, Walking Dead's also a blind spot for me. I was missing these prestige shows that were happening right there on cable, unfortunately. So very
Yeah.
aware of it, but aware of it as something that I was like missing out on a conversation I wasn't yet a part of.
Yeah, I love that, Kris. And like similarly, I was also aware of the show. Even if you've never watched an episode of Mad Men, you're very aware of the character of Don Draper and what John Hamm did with that character, the whole persona, the whole look, the whole vibe, the charming, troubled, broken, gaslighting executive, you know, everything you want to be and everything you would never want to be, all rolled into one is like a vibe that came across even as someone who didn't watch the show. I will say my blind spot is just the tiniest bit smaller than yours because I have watched the pilot episode. And it was one of those many things that fell into the category of this was awesome. I've got to give this the time of day to watch more carefully. And then, like a decade goes by. We've all been there with a show or property or two. However, there is one scene that I rewatch annually because it's actually part of a lesson plan at school. And this is from the pilot episode. It features a meeting with the executives of Lucky Strike cigarettes. Uh, and this is the moment where, again, I'm watching the scene out of context, but Don seems to have this epiphany that the key to advertising is that you are not selling a product, you are selling happiness. And even just watching the pilot in this episode that I realize we've not revealed which episode yet. Um, but that is an idea that I think Don is selling both in his personal life as well as his business world. And there's also the added bonus for me on a personal level that John Cullum is there, who portrays Holling Vincour on my favorite show that made me cry at the finale, which is Northern Exposure, playing the big exec for Lucky Strike. But yeah, so we have a little bit of a history. But that being said, we need to educate ourselves before we can really dig into a specific episode. So, the last time we did this, it was for the X-Files. And something that Kris and I found very helpful was telling our very knowledgeable fan the things that we thought that we knew about the X-Files. So we're going to try that out with Mad Men. We both prepared a couple of things that we think we know, and Alex is going to set us straight.
Okay.
Kris, why don't you kick us off?
This is, I have to say, my favorite thing is explaining to people things that they don't know. So that's excellent.
I'll just keep it like really light and basic. Don Draper is a womanizer.
That, in a way, that is true. He is a serial womanizer. But it's because he is trying to kind of fill this like broken hole inside of him. And one of the key things that he does in that is he kind of explores other versions of who he could be within the context of these affairs that he has with these other women. He's very good at compartmentalizing. His wife, as we meet in the episode that we're going to talk about, we won't reveal which it is, but there's a lot of episodes where she is his wife, so it's not a spoiler. Is Betty Draper, right? And she is sort of like the perfect 1950s housewife. She was beautiful. She was a model when he met her, and they fell in love. But then he kind of put her up on a pedestal in suburbia, and then went out into the world and decided that he didn't just want to be that man. He wanted to explore being all different kinds of men. And he most effectively was able to do that with the women in his life.
Got it.
Perfect.
A womanizer, but not one who just thinks it's okay to be out there doing that. It comes from a place of brokenness.
Yeah, it's like, I think about it in like, to contrast it with like a Tony Soprano type of womanizer, right? Where it's all kind of like this like base like sexual urge, and he needs to feel like a man, and his wife isn't letting him feel that way. For Don, it's much more kind of romanticized. It's much more of this escapism. It's this like he is a existential crisis of a character throughout the entire series, and the affairs is one way in which he is able to kind of tell himself the lie that he can keep putting on different hats and be different people in whatever room he wants to walk into.
Interesting. Thank you.
That's perfect. So mine I already kind of alluded to, and I think you also started to answer when you were talking about why this show matters so much. But I'm basing a lot of this on the pilot and that obsession with the Lucky Strike cigarette scene that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
But kind of based on all
other people's cigarettes cause cancer. Lucky Strikes are toasted.
Yes, such a great line. But based largely on that, I've just kind of had the assumption that, this show uses like actual advertising campaigns, products, advertising strategies, like as tools to reflect what Don is going through personally. Like I'm assuming those echoes can continue throughout the show.
Absolutely. That is definitely the case. And not just Don, many other characters as well. There is this sort of like interesting kind of contrast between the home life and the work life, right? That is a huge piece of this. It's as much about these characters' personal lives as it is their work lives. So sometimes the stories about the people that they're pursuing are more business oriented. And sometimes it is more of like a metaphor for the creative process that the writers who are making this show and the actors who are making the show are also experiencing. But yes, many times, most pivotally, I would say, in the season 1 finale, there's this incredible monologue that many people might know, where Don is kind of making the pitch for a carousel, the kind of the device where you used to use as like a projector for like family photos, basically.
Oh yeah.
the at the time, like, the big pitch that everyone else was going with was, like, it's a spaceship because it's kind of like, it's circular, and it was the early '60s, and
Mm,
that was cool, and he sold them on the idea that it's on a spaceship, it's a time machine because it takes you backwards
yeah.
and forwards through time to the place where you knew that you were home, and that is, like, a the monologue is he is giving this beautiful kind of testament to nostalgia and to the power of feeling like you are home with
Mm,
the people that you love at the exact moment that his family is literally leaving to go to Thanksgiving without him because they are on such bad terms, and
yeah.
he ends that monologue coming home to an empty house. So that's the sort of
Mm.
way in which advertising often gets used on the show.
Interesting.
Chef's kiss, and again, for Mad Men fans who failed to read the title of this episode, that's yet another hint at which episode we'll be digging into today. Kris, what else do you have for things that you think you know about Mad Men?
I can keep it much less smart than you,
Hmm.
sir. My general impression of the show. Not only is it heavily concerned with all things sartorial, it also really romanticizes tobacco and alcohol. There's a lot of
Hmm.
swanky smoking and drinking happening. Like the people who you see smoking and drinking that make you think, I would like to smoke and drink.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people had that experience of watching the show. I didn't because it also shows the downside of those
Mm,
choices and how it kind of destroys your life. So I never really felt like it was glamorizing it, but many other people who watched it did.
Okay.
Because it does kind of it captures a moment in time where, and especially this was especially true of the advertising industry, from what
mm,
I've learned, where you would just have these like every office had a bar inside the office, yeah,
Mhm.
you would be drinking the whole half the day. It was you kind of go out to lunch with clients and you don't come back for 4 hours, right? They do depict all of those things.
mhm,
But Don Draper is a alcoholic, and it
yeah.
in many cases absolutely ruins his life. So I would say that it has a complicated relationship
Okay.
with those things. But one thing that it did for people was inspire them to think, oh man, it was so cool back then when you could just
Yeah.
like have an affair with your secretary and smoke a cigar in the
Right,
office and
right,
have
Right.
cocktails.
Yeah, that's what
But
I'm.
it does also explore the downsides of literally all of those choices.
Well, good. It ought to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in tonight's very top secret episode, before our guy Don Draper speaks, I really did notice him coughing as he woke up
Mm.
from a night's rest. So
Yeah.
that I was definitely thinking about all those cigarettes as he was coughing and wondering if that was intentional.
I hope it is, honestly. Sometimes shows like there's a certain way, for instance, like Carrie Bradshaw smokes a cigarette on Sex
Mhm.
and the City that you're like, damn, that looks like it hits, you know?
Hmm,
Yeah,
hmm.
yeah, and there's definitely those moments for sure. I mean, I think the first episode of the first show opens with him, like, striking up a cigarette and,
Mm,
holding a cocktail in his hand, so, it's definitely a part of the DNA.
got it.
Perfect. All right. I think I have the perfect final thing that I think I know for this segment. I made a point of not looking this up, even though I really wanted to. It's just one of those notions that somehow like took hold in the back of my brain. And it's been sitting there for a while. But Don Draper is maybe possibly DB Cooper, who famously jumped out of an airplane with tons of cash and the perfect crime that was never solved.
So during the first season of the show, there was a
What?
sort of fan theory going around that he was secretly DB Cooper. It became much less of a fan theory as the series progressed, but this is because in the first season, there is this sort of I said this show is not a mystery box show, and it very much
Hmm.
isn't for the most part, but there is a mystery at the heart of the first season of the show, which is who is Don Draper? I think it's important to know, it's important to understand for the episode we're going to talk about also, that Don Draper is not Don Draper. Don Draper is a character named Dick Whitman, who was a poor farmer's son who grew up in a whorehouse, as he puts it, his words, not mine. Um, and he
Hmm.
kind of basically, through a series of unexpected opportunities, takes on the identity of a man who was his kind of commanding officer in the army during the Korean War, named Don Draper. So
Mm.
that way he can kind of get out of his station in life and build something new for himself. And so he is a self-made man, as a result, in the sense that he has stolen someone else's identity. his commanding officer died in the war, and he kind of takes his dog tag, and that's the mechanism for him stealing the identity. And a lot comes of that over time, but mostly it's because he is this sort of man who feels like he kind of just he mythologizes himself at the very least, and to the idea that he can construct his own image out of anything, right? He can be a new person, and he believes other people can be a new person. You can let the past fall away and disappear, and of course, ends up being haunted by it anyway. But yes, so because of that, in the first season of the show, there's a lot of intrigue in terms of like what is actually going on with him, and it's a secret throughout most of the show. Almost no one in the show ever really finds out who he truly was. It's a very tightly held, closely guarded secret that because he is committing identity fraud. It's a crime, so it's very serious that people don't ever find that out. But because of that, there was this sort of idea of maybe he's DB Cooper, and that's why there's a mystery. And then once it was clear he wasn't actually DB Cooper, there was this sort of like fun fan theory of like, well, maybe that's how the show will end. Like he will lose the Don Draper persona and he will become a man who jumps out of a plane. But that was never to be the case. A lot of people also read a lot into the fact that like the opening credits of the show has like a man falling from the sky as like maybe that's a clue. But the opening credits was not and never will be a clue to anything. And the people who were watching the show that way were just, they were lost pills. They were watching it wrong,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yes.
This is a wrinkle I was completely unaware of. This, wow. I had to just double check how close in proximity the movie Without a Paddle dropped to this show, and wondering why DB Cooper was so popular in our pop culture imagination at the time. That's where people went with their theorizing.
Sure. Well, DB Cooper is ever present in society. Of course, there is a great DB Cooper Easter egg in the first season of Loki, where we find out that Loki is DB Cooper in the MCU. So I think for a certain very narrow sliver of the American consumer of media, DB Cooper is always close to the top of mind.
All right. Well, folks, it's time. If you did not read the episode title before you clicked on this, we are here to talk about the Mad Men Season 3 finale, Shut the Door, Have a Seat.
Yes.
So without further ado, let's hear my quick recap. Don Draper is really clawing his way up from the bottom in this one. After waking up in a child's bed, he gets some insider info from a big client, Conrad Hilton of Hilton Hotels, that he and the advertising firm are about to get shaken around in some larger corporate machinations. While Hilton tries to convince himself he is doing Don a favor, it ultimately leads Don to call out the predatory nature of their relationship and prompts him to make a move toward a future he can control. From there, Don masterminds a series of closed-door conversations to launch some corporate subterfuge of his own. The plan? Yank the strongest pieces of the firm out from under the higher-ups before the company acquisition goes through and start up an all-new agency. Don dials up his charm all the way to pull his colleagues, friends, and even enemies into his grand vision and pull off a big old F-U covert op in the process. Along the way, he is haunted by the tarnished dreams of his father and an impending divorce. While Don initially tries to fight fire with fire in the divorce proceedings, he ultimately decides to grant Betty some space and some grace so that she can pursue the future she always wanted. We are certainly primed for a new chapter of the series. Now, Alex, you are our resident expert here. Did anything else stand out to you, or did I misinterpret anything? How do you feel about this recap?
Overall, a very thorough and quality recap, I would say. There's obviously details that were important to get into that we will later in terms of the people that he chooses to meet with and why and how those conversations go, but we will definitely get there. One point of correction, he's not actually in a child's bed at the beginning of the episode. He's in. I can understand why you'd be confused because they say he was sleeping in Jean's room, right? And that makes you think like, oh, then. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Jean is the baby's name. But it is also the name of Betty's father, who was briefly living with them prior to his death.
Okay.
And so that is the room that he was staying in. And that is why Sally, Don's daughter, says that it's really creepy in there because she did see him die in there and then thought that the baby was like possessed by her dead grandpa's um, ghost, and
Oh no.
that kid's gone through a lot of stuff. So that's why she thinks that that's a creepy space, and that's the room that she's in.
Well, thank you for that. I might have to change a few notes I have on that daughter to be a little bit kinder, but yeah.
She was breaking my heart.
Oh, she's incredible. And
Yeah.
Kiernan Shipka was cast as like a 5-year-old girl on that show. And
Oh,
they
wow.
basically were just like, you were there to be a 5-year-old. Like, just like look
Yeah.
adorable, read a couple of lines. And then they like realized, oh, you're actually an incredible actress. And so they kept giving her more and more and more to do. And she becomes a very key part of the show as she grows into an incredible actress that she has continued to be. So very cool.
Interesting.
Unlike her brother, Bobby, who was played by 3 different actors during the run of the show.
Dang.
I was
We are
going to say,
seeing Bobby number 2,
Okay.
who went on to bigger and better things. He
Yes.
left the show to become a member of Once Upon a Time on ABC. So,
Henry.
yes.
That didn't click for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
we just started watching Once Upon a Time at my house like last week. I introduced
Nice.
my daughter to the
Oh,
first few
perfect
episodes.
timing.
So I was like, Henry. My wife and I both like did the Leo pointing meme last night when we were
Yeah.
watching the episode.
Nice. Beautiful stuff. And all the more impressive that young actress right on the heels of Holly Wheeler being recast in Stranger Things season 5. It's fresh on my mind. That being said, though, Alex, there's so many great episodes of Mad Men, so many creative things that they've done. I know you really labored over picking just one episode. So how did you land on this one?
So it's a controversial choice, I imagine, for fans of the show, because it is not this episode is not considered the best episode of Mad Men. That is by and large The Suitcase, which is an episode from season 4, which is my favorite episode of the show as well. It's probably one of the best episodes of television ever written. But that requires a lot of context. It's paying off stories that had been told over the course of seasons of the show. It's a great single hour of television that you could appreciate on a base level, but you would lose so much of the richness if we watched that. Another popular episode would be The Wheel, which is the season 1 finale, which features that incredible monologue that I referenced about nostalgia. And that is a really good episode of the show, and I think could have been a good one for us to do. And there's a couple of episodes later on that are really cool from like experimental perspectives. There's one where they all do speed and it's crazy. There's an LSD episode. There's an episode that's like an homage to the French New Wave. There's just a beautiful thing to see. Lots of different choices we could have done. The reason why I did this one, shut the door and have a seat. It's because, one, it lets us check in on pretty much every major character and their relationship with all of the other important characters on the show. It's a really nice way to kind of get a good feel of what's going on with everybody. Because Mad Men is a show, because it had such an incredible ensemble, not every character is in every episode. Not every character is important in every episode. Some characters are kind of background characters in one story and then really core characters in another story. So a random sampling of characters is not something that or a complete sampling of characters, I should say, is not something that you often get on the show. So this really let us explore all of the main characters and their core relationships. Number 2, without any context, it's a really fun heist sort of show, episode of the show, where they're kind of doing this kind of thing of like, oh, they have to put a team together and do some corporate espionage. And that just seemed like, if you don't know anything about the show or these people, I felt like that would be entertaining for you guys. And I hope it was. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, great energy.
Number 3, it's the end of so much of what this show was up until this point. And so you get a lot of references to things that come before. You get a sense of where things were because you're ending, which I hoped could be intriguing for you guys, as like, I'd like to know how we got here with some of these people. But it also means that it's the start of something new, which when we get into season 4, it's a bold new vision of the show. Like, Don's marriage is over. The firm that he's been working in for 3 years is gone. Everything is new. We have new characters coming in. We have a lot of new things. So it's a very exciting moment to join the show too. So whether you were intrigued about coming to find out where you had missed, or you just were like, I want to see what happens next, it felt like a really cool pivot point. So for all of those reasons, I thought this was the perfect one for us to do.
Absolutely perfect
Love that.
choice. Do you know what else just occurred to me while you were talking, Alex? And that is we were talking about Love Actually today, and I just remembered that features January Jones
Sure
as
does.
one of the American girls. So
That's right.
there you go.
I think she's like from Wisconsin in that one, right? She's
I think so.
very excited by a British boy's accent.
Well, that does it for personal connections. And for any podlings who are new to the show in season 3, up next we have the episode as literature. We're going to keep it kind of tight this time around, but this is where Randy and I will go back and forth, asking Alex some clarifying questions about this episode and how it fits into the larger context of the show.
And I will try not to monologue too long for those answers.
We are here for you to solo all day, my friend. Don't you?
It's like I'm sure that every question you ask, I could do like a 10,000 word essay on an answer. So
Well, like I was trying to overthink these questions, and I was like, we're going to ask Alex questions, and he's going to reveal the stuff I wouldn't have even known to ask about. So we're going to be
Exactly
great.
right. Exactly right.
well, and that was one thing on that point before we move on that I forgot to mention earlier that was really fun about the show at the time was that it inspired some of the best writing
Mm.
of TV criticism that existed. Like people were putting out
Yeah.
these huge essays at the end of every episode of the
Mm.
show that were really well put together, really thoughtful, really rich explorations of the symbolism of the show, of the dynamics of what it was saying about society, what it was saying about that point in history, how all of this stuff. So it's incredible writing from so many of like the best people to have ever done TV criticism came because of this show. And that is another reason why it was so important to me at the time.
Beautiful.
Great call out.
Okay, Alex, we asked you about Mad Men at large by, pointing out some things we thought maybe we knew, but we've got to get into the nitty-gritty details of this particular episode. So, I did love seeing Don give his wife some grace and some space because even as a new watcher, I sensed that she deserved it and needed it. I suspect that is correct. That being said, I did not love the vibe I got off of this Henry fella. So tell me about this Henry guy.
Okay, I feel like if you learned more about him, that's not going to help that much. But so one thing I want to say though, on the point of like the relationship between Betty and Don before we get into it, I think is really important. Um, in this episode, we see a very ugly fight between the two of them towards the end of the episode, where Don comes home drunk. He finds out that that she has basically built this, as he puts it, a life raft for herself with this Henry Francis character. And it's ugly, right? He's cruel to her. He yanks her out of bed. He calls her a whore. It's nasty. And I think that if you've never seen this show, you might think that is at least sometimes typical of their dynamic, like especially because this is Matthew Weiner. He got his start on The Sopranos. The Sopranos features many very ugly maritable spats between Tony and Carmela over the years. And I think it's really important to know that is not what their relationship is like. They're definitely a couple that have lots of problems, especially problems with communicating, trusting. Obviously, there's a lot of infidelity. He was secretly a different person. There's a lot of things. But typically it's expressed through like a look, through a glance, through like a disregarding like tone and voice. Through Don's absence. Oftentimes he'll just disappear. He'll go on a business trip to California and just not come back for a few months. And you're just like, what's happening? I don't know where you are. So that's typically how it goes. This is the ugliest conflict or confrontation that they ever have on the show. And I think that's important to know that is, because for these people, like that is as bad as it gets for them.
That's
comforting to know.
Yes.
For sure. Because I wouldn't have picked that up because she doesn't seem particularly shaken. There isn't like this like sort of shocked, horrified. Like she's very sort of defiant and resilient in that moment in the face of his drunken anger.
And that's very important because she's not shocked by the situation. That her resolve there is meant to show her growth as a character. She's someone who is a very she's like was always like the prettiest girl in town, right? And she was praised for her looks and told to like sit there and be beautiful, right? And her arc over those first 3 seasons especially is trying to learn how to have agency for herself as a character, for not to just be someone's wife and someone's mother and someone's daughter, to be like a person who like actually wants things for themselves and can actually go for them. And so her standing up to him in those moments and showing that resolve is actually a very empowering moment for her, even though it also features her husband being as cruel as he's ever been to her. So,
Wow, that much more impressive.
yeah. But the Henry Francis question is an interesting one. He is a person, he works for the governor of New York. He meets Betty while she is like 7 months pregnant at a country club function that Don has brought her to. And he like basically sees her and sees her extremely pregnant self and just like immediately falls in love with her because he sees her as this like wounded bird who needs to be taken care of, right? And there's like this, and she really does need someone to take care of her in that moment because she's pregnant because basically like their relationship, Don and Betty's relationship, was on the rocks for most of season 2. They were separated during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a whole thing because the show likes to use history to, complement the emotional journeys of our characters. So, and she ends up, they sleep together during this tumultuous time, and she becomes pregnant. And they make the decision to stay together so that way she can have the baby. And obviously, we see by the end of the next season that didn't work out very well. But so she is now very pregnant, very overwhelmed, having a hard time kind of figuring out how she can make sense of the personal growth that she had over season 2 to get to the point to throw Don out, and then the sort of backslide into trying to have this baby and make things work with him. And in comes Henry Francis as sort of like this white knight savior who just like cares about her and thinks that she's beautiful and interesting and that she doesn't deserve to be put through what Don puts her through, which is not just like the womanizing and the stuff, but just the not being present, right?
Yeah.
And so for Henry Francis, he is someone for Betty who is a present force who believes in her and who wants her to be the best version of herself. So in that way, he's really nice and he's a really good figure for her in her life. And that continues to be the case throughout the rest of the show. But there is also a sort of weird thing about how he comes into her life that he just sees this, sad pregnant lady and is like, I need to rescue you. And that's a little bit weird and a little bit creepy.
So we never get an ulterior motive there?
No, he's just a nice guy, as it turns out.
Okay, I would not have guessed that at all.
Because, to me, like that approach reads like he didn't fall in love with her. He doesn't know her. He fell in love with the idea of her, the idea of what type of person, what type of situation she's in, and how he might relate to that as the white knight you described. There's nothing that's very sus to me. So it's nice that the writing never really went there, and they decided to let that be as pure as it appears. Maybe he just had a big heart that was called in that moment, and great.
I think it's the show is very like they do that on purpose, right? They want you to feel like, is this okay? Like, is what's happening real, or is there something kind of weird and creepy about it? But then they let him as a character show up for her and show up for her kids over and over again, and be like, no, he's actually just a good guy, as it turns out.
Cool.
Nice.
One clarifying question that I had, shifting back towards the business of it all. Repeatedly in the reactions as each next character got the news that the sale was happening, there was this common refrain of again. And so I'm curious how they played into the show so far.
One of the funniest things about the episode is everyone having that same reaction of again, because the context for that is that in the second half of season 2, this character named Duck Phillips, who kind of comes in as sort of like the head of accounts at the beginning of season 2, because Roger Sterling, who's the John Slattery character that we meet, he was previously the head of accounts, and then he has a heart attack at the end of season 1. He comes back to the show, but is in kind of more of a like senior position, and they hire a new head of accounts, who's this Duck Phillips character, and he is talking about alcoholism, is a significant alcoholic, and he kind of has this really like this job for him in season 2. It's supposed to be this new fresh start for him. He has this history with this firm in the UK that he kind of built. He had to go to because he kind of made a fool out of himself in Madison Avenue through his alcoholism.
Okay.
But so he's back to the States. This is his fresh start. And he gets into like a lot of conflict with Don along the way because their personalities just do not mesh well. They clash consistently. And while Don is on kind of a spirit journey in California, Duck, feeling very insecure, decides that he wants to be the big swinging dick, and so he negotiates this big sale of the company to his old firm in the UK, Putnam Powell and Lowell, led by Mr. Sheffield himself, which I'm sure you guys noticed. I don't know any Nanny fans.
Oh, yeah. I said it out loud while I was
Yes,
watching the episode.
impossible not to think about him as anything else. A fun thing that happens on Mad Men is that Matthew Weiner very frequently hires like 90s sitcom actors to play serious roles in and like guest performances. Like Mr. Belding has a very notable cameo appearance in one episode later in the series. So, but yeah, so Mr. Sheffield, he sells the firm to them, and now this is just basically what within at one calendar year, they're now selling the whole firm again. So that's why everybody's like, "Wait, what? You're doing this again? We just had to deal with these fucking British people all year, and now they're selling the company too."
Got it. Love that.
Perfect. All right. My next question. It's about the kids. Obviously, they're having this ugly fight. When Don's in his sort of darkest place, he's like, "Oh, and I'm going after the kids. I am going to get the kids." Now, I read this as being just out of spite, but I am curious what his relationship with his kids is like. Is there anything of value there? Is he more of a Midge Maisel type when it comes to his relationship with his kids? Where are we at with this?
Well, no one could be a Midge Maisel type more than Midge Maisel, so that would be a tough bar. But no, his that statement I feel like is more of a statement about his perception of Betty's parenting than about his own parenting. Because Betty is a complicated mother. She can be very emotionally distant and can be sometimes cruel to her children, especially Sally. They have a very difficult relationship. It gets more difficult over time. But she could also just be kind of sharp with them, like what Sally Draper in I think season 2 will like runs up and was like, "Mom, like we want to do something," and she's just like, she's like, "Mom, I'm bored," and she's like, "Only boring people are bored. Go do something." She's like, "Oh, that's not very nurturing of a mother." So yeah, she has a tough time with that kind of thing. She also ends up like having a weird emotional affair with Sally's childhood friend that extends throughout the whole show. It's like kind of complicated.
Okay.
Who is played by Matthew Weiner's real life son. It's just a whole thing. But anyway, so she's not the best mom as it is. So that is true. Don, when he is present, he can have this like really powerful emotional connection with anyone, and that extends to his children.
Of course, yeah.
And I think he cares deeply about his children because he had such a difficult childhood, and so he really, in some abstract sense, wants better for them. But he's also a father who will just walk away from his life for months at a time without telling anyone where he even is. So his commitment to his children are very sporadic. And also because he holds his past so close, he doesn't let his children really know him very well throughout. And that comes up in a very comical way later on in the series, where at one point the children are at Don's penthouse apartment alone in the city, and a black woman comes to the door saying that she's his mother and that she helped raise him, and that she should be let in the house, and they do because they don't have any reason to think that that's not true, and so and then they get robbed, and it's a whole thing. So that's the degree to which they don't know him is profound.
Oh wow.
But his love for them is genuine, and when they are together, they have a connection that is really important. So it's complicated is the answer to that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You can't see how quick they are to cling tight when they think that he's leaving the home, when they get sit down for that conversation. And Sally very quickly turns to accuse her mother, right? Like, what have you done to make this happen? Yeah. Interesting.
And also, like, there is a strong kindred spirit between Sally and Don throughout the show. Like, there's a sense that, like, they understand something about each other that they don't see in other people, and that's oftentimes
Okay.
unspoken, but it is powerful.
There was something
Like even
powerful about their connection.
you even see that in the fight that we watch, where she is the one who calls him out on his bullshit. Where
Mhm.
she's like, "You're going. You said you weren't going to go. Why are you going?" And he's like, "I'm not going. I'm just living elsewhere." Like giving her a fucking like marketing pitch, and she's
Yep,
like,
yep, yep.
you can't just say things and you don't mean them. You can't do that." And it's like she, even at that young age, sees through him in a way that he's made a career of people not being able to. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's meaningful.
Interesting. They had me weeping in that scene for sure. The two of them really moved me.
Yeah.
My last clarifying question is maybe a small one, but I couldn't help but think of this when you spoke earlier about the ways in which this show either uses direct historical references for the story or isn't afraid to at least refer to it. They were throwing around a lot of Kennedy conversation in this episode.
Yes.
I assume this was right after the assassination. How did that play into the show? Was that a big moment?
It was a
narratively?
big yes. Yeah, they do a full episode about the Kennedy assassination. Um, it is literally the previous episode of the show. Like
Got it.
Okay.
episode 12 of season 3 is called The Grown-Ups, and it is about the Kennedy assassination,
Okay.
basically. Like
Got it.
through the lens of our characters, right? So there's things happening in their lives, but they live in this world, and like everyone else in America in 1963, like when he was killed, like everything stopped and was about that. And so
Mm.
we see those events through our
Mhm.
characters in different lenses. And so that's why this is every episode of the show is basically about a month after the previous episode of the show in the timeline. They hold
Okay.
pretty consistently to that.
Okay.
So we're dealing with about a month after the Kennedy assassination,
Nice.
and that's why at one point, like when Betty's like, I spoke to a lawyer, and Don is like, you know, we've all been through a lot recently. It's like, come on, you can't put the Kennedy assassination on this dude. Get over yourself.
That's what
So
he's referring to in that
that's what
Oh,
he's
man.
referring
That's
to.
hilarious.
Wow. Wow. It did feel like it was more of a footnote as it was being referenced here rather than something that happened yesterday. So it makes sense a full month has gone by.
Yeah. And and they also build to it like throughout this season, in the sense of like there's this like, so the episode where the assassination happens is called The Grown-Ups, but the episode that is more associated with the assassination is called Guy Walks Into an Advertising Agency, which is episode 6 of season 3. Because that features like this young, prominent, like advertisement executive from the UK who is like who the Brits who are now in charge of Sterling Cooper are very high on. They make this big to do about he's coming to the company and he's going to be taking over. Basically, he's like our new shining star. He's going to be in charge. And they introduce him to everyone, and it's very much like new generation, right? And he's like this very handsome guy. And then they end up having a party where part of the party is kind of a celebration of the fact that one of the accounts guys got the John Deere tractor account, and they end up having a very poor decision of, we're all drunk, we should ride around the tractor.
I've seen this clip.
Yes. And so they do that in the office, and they ask the poor secretary who's riding it at the time and is very intoxicated, drives over Guy, the man's name, his leg, and it gets brutally maimed, and like explosion of blood, and they basically like match like shot for shot the Zapruder film of that moment, to try to like kind of conjure this sort of sense of like, you know, this is a moment in time where there was this youthful kind of, you know, optimism that is just snuffed out, and then our characters sort of have to live inside of that. So there is that also.
Okay. I only have one more question, but it's the most important question about this episode, and that is, how long has the art department been labeled the fart department? There's that little calligraphy F in front of the A, and I've got to know. That's my biggest burning question.
I believe this is the first time we've seen it be depicted as such, but it is not a surprise to see it like that, and it would not surprise me to know that it had been like that for a while.
Does that mean that possibly our midnight raiders defaced that door that night as a part of their
Oh
final
no, that
defiance?
is no. Certainly, the art department would have done that to themselves.
Okay, got it.
The art department are kind of depicted as like, you know, we're still in the early side of the 60s, so drugs are not like a huge presence yet. That will come later on the show. But if anybody's doing drugs in 1963 in that office, it's the art department.
Sweet.
So
Okay,
Love that.
perfect.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering those questions, Alex.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we have been introduced to Mad Men. We've asked questions about the show, questions about this episode, but let's finally dig into this thing. This episode is called Shut the Door, Take a Seat. So I want to know from each of you which instance of having someone shut the door and take a seat, whether or not we got that word for word phrasing, was like the most effective, essential, or engaging for you. Alex, we got to start with you because you brought this episode to us.
So the funniest one is definitely the Pete one. The Pete and Trudy, who are, the shining young couple on a hill. Those two, and I'm so excited to hear what you think about Trudy because it's such a fun. You guys have been covering Alison Brie on Community. She was doing Community and Mad Men at the same time. It's a 1-to-1 overlap. Like she was on both of those shows simultaneously. So and obviously there's a lot. Both Annie
Alex,
and
can I
Trudy.
just jump in and say that meant so much to me that I looked it up 3 days after this episode aired. Alison Brie as Annie on Community would kiss Jeffrey Winger to win a debate, proving that man is essentially evil.
Great moment.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's
carry
great.
on.
But like both Trudy and Annie are quintessential Alison Brie characters, but they're different characters in very fun ways. So I was very excited for you guys to get to know her a little bit better, and this is just a perfect Trudy Campbell scene. I love the part where where Pete very firmly is like, well, I have other plans, and Trudy is just like, Peter, can I speak to you for a moment? Just like, because she's clearly listening to the whole thing. It's like, you're ruining everything. Stop. Don't be a dick. And then that also then gets paid off later in the scene where as everyone is leaving, Roger just says, bye, Trudy, like knowing that she's literally like right there listening to the entire conversation. So, but I love that for the comedy of it and like for like the whole business of Pete, like pretending to be sick and, pretending like he's not looking for a new job. And then like over the course of the scene, giving everything up. And all of that is very fun, but the emotional one that matters is the scene with it's the two-part scene really with Don and Peggy. Both the opening and then the way that it ends later when he goes to her apartment. They are the two kind of main characters of the show, if there is main characters of the show. Don Draper is obviously like the anti-hero protagonist of the prestige drama. But the first episode of the show is Peggy's first day at the office as his secretary. And her rise from secretary to, create like someone who could be the creative director of a firm by the end of the season, by the end of the series, is the arc of the show in many ways. And so their relationship with each other is core. And this is such a beautiful sort of exploration of that. We get future ones, but this is a really nice kind of way to explore where they've been and where they're going and what they really mean to each other as partners in the thing that they both care about the most, which is their careers.
Beautiful. Kris, how about for you? What was your favorite shut the door, take a seat?
Yeah, I'll just yes and Alex. That was going to go right to that one because actually, Randy, you just switched up the phrasing. And that was what was most important to me, what caught me most. Because the first time in the episode, we get the title said verbatim. Shut the door, have a seat.
Yep.
Not with Peggy. It's a command. He doesn't invite her to have a seat. He tells her to take a seat. Shut the door and take a seat. He tells her in that first interaction. In the second interaction is a totally different energy. I almost called this out earlier, Randy, during the mini recap when you talked about Don putting on his most charming self for each one of these moments, right? Not this time. This wasn't the one where he felt he had to put on the charm. This was the one that he took for granted. This was the one he thought he could walk in, say what had to be said. As he'll tell her later, he just sees her as an extension of himself, and that's not fair, right? So just like you can tell your right hand to do what you need your right hand to do, he thought he could just walk in the room and just tell her what was going to happen next without any consideration for her as an individual agent. And so, yeah, I thought the two together were, without knowing anything else about the show, it was so obvious how core those two and their dynamic was to the show overall because of this little two-part interaction.
And it's a big moment because something that's been happening over the course of this season of TV is that she has kind of like the first season of Mad Men is about her going from secretary to a member of the creative team, right? And that is a difficult journey, and that's a journey that Don plays a key role in, but is not the only person. There's a character called Freddie Rumsen who's played by Bill Murray's brother, actually, and who's excellent on the show. And he's actually the executive who really notices that she has something and encourages it first, and then because Don is so powerful and important, once he gets behind it, that then is the difference. But she doesn't owe everything to him, but he thinks that she does, right? And everyone else thinks that she does too because she was his secretary. And in season 2 of the show, you see her kind of then come into her own as this new person, and their relationship builds. And then in season 3, she's at this point where she is thinking about like what comes next for her and if she's just going to be in his shadow forever. And one of the things that she says in that first scene is like, well, who else is coming? And he's like, well, why does that matter? And she's like, it's important. The reason why it's important is because she has made a kind of a pact with one of the other characters on the show, Kenny Cosgrove, who's another, he's on the account side of things, which like in advertising, at least in the show's world, there's creative and there's accounts. Accounts are the people who kind of get the business and who court the executives, and they go out to the lunch and stuff. And then the creatives are the ones who come up with all of the campaigns, right? So Kenny is this person who she's developed this like good working relationship with. And they basically have a pact where they're both looking to get out of Sterling Cooper because they're not happy with the change in leadership and everything else. And they've decided, like, if you go somewhere, I'm going to go somewhere too. And so that's why she's saying, like, it matters who's coming because I have a whole life. Things happen to me outside of this room when you're here, right? And then his response to her is basically like, I'm not gonna beg you to come with me. And she's like, beg me? You didn't even ask me. And you didn't. Never asked. And then when we get to see the, second scene where he does ask her, and it is such a beautiful kind of testament to not just their creative partnership, but like a very intimate connection that they have personally, which is alluded to. And I'm curious how you guys understood what they were referring to, since you don't know all the details there. But it's very meaningful what they're referring to. And that's what made it so beautiful.
Perfect. All right.
Well, you, bud.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great options. I've got some that have a little bit more thematic weight that I think I'm going to sneak in later on. I'm going to go with one that's not technically shut the door, take a seat. This is technically a phone call. But we've got Lane Price on the phone with Mr. Sheffield.
Just constantly, he's never not beaten down, man. That dude.
Well, like they have a couple of different phone calls, and they both very much have this vibe of a shut the door, take a seat phone call, because there are big things on the line, there are big conversations happening. But I was really taken by the advice that gets sent Lane's way, that very first conversation. When Lane realizes he doesn't have all the information, he doesn't understand the sale as well as he thought, and he does kind of have that "what about me" moment to his boss. We see him step out of this very confident space, but he's told, "You'll prove yourself indispensable. You always do," which is a pretty backhanded compliment, because as much as it suggests that he is capable, it also really just makes him kind of sound like a cockroach. Like, yeah, you're going to find a way to weasel your way in. You're going to, get yourself stuck somewhere in the inner workings of this business one way or another. And he doesn't realize he's really throwing down the white glove there. And, I love how that pushes Lane forward to kind of strike out for himself, build something in a more genuine way, rather than being the guy who comes in, who's the fixer, who manipulates things. So I love that shift in the episode, because that was one of the key pieces they needed to shift into place to make this all happen, for sure.
Yeah, that is one. So one of the things I love most about this show is the writing, and that's such a great example of how well written it is, because you believe that Mr. Sheffield views that as a sincere compliment, right?
Yeah.
But what he says, and also how he says it, is so dismissive of Lane as a person, right? It's like, oh, you'll figure it out. It's basically like, you'll figure it out. You're so good at what you do that it doesn't matter. We can treat you however we like because you'll be fine. I don't have to think about you as a person. I don't have to think about you having this emotional experience of being someone who's from another country, right? And that's like maybe more context for you is that like he's British, right? He's from the British firm. He's just there for the last few months to kind of set the firm in a good place before like someone else comes in to take over. Like that's kind of the functionary role that he has, and he has this like history with the firm of doing that in different places. And it's just this, it's taken as a given that he will just do whatever they ask. Whenever they ask, he will go in, solve all of their problems. They don't need to know how or why. They just assume he will because he's good at his job. And that's like, it's so interestingly observed because in most contexts, that is a compliment. And yet it is so clear that it is not.
Love that. Earlier, Alex, you described this as something of a heist episode, and you were talking about why you picked this one, like the great fun energy that it had, and that was so palpable for me. So I'm curious to, outside of just the sit-down conversations, there's also that larger sort of heist moment. So between the two of those things, who's your MVP of this subterfuge plot?
There's only one answer to that, and that is the person who is always the MVP, and that is Miss Joan Harris, of course.
Yes. Yes.
And the interesting history on that context for you, she was like basically like she ran the office. Like she was like the head of the secretaries. She ran the office. She like knows everything and is excellent at her job at all times. But in season 3, she left the firm because she got married. And at the time, that was sort of this idea of like she's only a few years older than someone like Peggy, but that difference in the generation is so pronounced because she's someone who came of age in the 50s versus the 60s, right? So even though she's only maybe 5 or 6 years older, she might as well be 60 years older in the sense of like what the expectations are for her and what she viewed as possible and what she viewed as what she was supposed to do and what she wanted to have. And so even though she was so incredibly good at her job, it was always the expectation that she was there so that way she could eventually find a husband, get married, and settle down and become and raise a family. And that is what she ends up doing in season 3. She leaves the firm, and this is her coming back after a number of episodes of not being on the show at all, as this indispensable person who the firm and these people need because no one can do what she does and do it with aplomb. So she's absolutely the MVP, as she always is.
Amazing. Nice. Such a great answer and totally expected. Randy, do you have somebody different in mind that you want to celebrate?
Yeah, I mean, Joan is the correct answer. She was at the top of my list. I was secretly hoping you'd come to me first so I could say that, but I'm glad it was Alex so that he could give us the full context. But yes, like Joan's the correct answer. I'll be shocked, Kris, if you have a different name at number 1 on your list. I mean, you could make a case for Dawn, I suppose, but I'm going to go with my second choice. I'm going to go with Bert on this one. It's not just
every scene in this.
Yeah,
in this episode.
You mean the Colonel?
The Colonel, yeah. He's not just because he's my namesake as a Bertrand. No one's ever actually called me Bert. I
believe he's Bertram Cooper.
Yeah, Bertram. Yeah, so not quite my namesake, but in terms of nickname, my dad was a Bert, so maybe that softened me a little bit. But the reason I'm going to call him the MVP is not that like he necessarily does the heaviest lifting, but you could argue in some ways he's making the biggest sacrifice out of everyone because he has been in this world for a long time. He has paid his dues. He goes, mano a mano against Don Draper in this moment. They have this really great exchange. He says young men love risk because they can't imagine the consequences. And when Don comes back with, yeah, but you old men love building golden tombs and sealing the rest of us in with you, that eventually gets through to him, right? Like he doesn't want to let go of this vital and essential part of who he is. Someone who wants to build something, someone who wants to create something. Not that I have like a ton of, empathy and care for, an old businessman. That being said, like, I don't think anyone would knock him for being like, yeah, let me take the resources I have and retire happily. I'll go out to pasture. It's all good. I'm out of the game. I've done my time. But the fact that he sticks in it and it is so essential to adding some legitimacy to this thing makes him the MVP for me. After, of course, Joan, who actually
Yes.
knows how to do everything.
The thing that's great about Bert in those scenes is that he just goes for the jugular every time. He's just like, either join or like Roger makes a joke that his pitch is join or die. But that truly is like he threatens to lock Harry Crane in the closet if he doesn't go along with
Yeah.
it. Like he has no time for anyone's bullshit. He's like, we're doing this and you're doing it with us.
Wow. And he's got that great Colonel Sanders goatee going, you know.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody else that I want to celebrate. I guess I will just quickly give the original. I was going to walk into my Joan pick if it got to me. I'm not surprised that it never did.
Yeah.
I was going to highlight how Lane feels so integral when he first gets added to the group. It feels like he unlocks something for our big three who they've got this big idea, they've got this passion, and they're ready to go sell. But there's certain things about the way a business is conducted day to day. They have no idea.
Yeah.
And they need Lane. And that feels like he's like the one. But then you find out later, no, he's not even the one. They're at this heist moment. They're in the office. It's late on Sunday. They're going to do the thing that they need to do, gather all this intel, all the materials that make managing these accounts possible. And they don't even know where to begin. They don't know what they're looking at in these files. Like, they don't know where to begin. It's not until Joan walks in that the energy really picks up. All of a sudden, that was the moment where the episode became most engaging to me. Joan is the one that makes it all possible for them.
Yeah.
She's like, I've already done this, that, and the third, and I've called some movers. Let's do this. Like, she is a doer. My wife called her the fixer.
Yeah.
She's the one you call when you need to get stuff done. She has all the connections. She knows who does what. She knows everybody else's job as well as she knows her own job. And that's the difference between her and somebody like Lane. Lane might have skills that the others don't have, but he couldn't do what they do. And there's all kinds of things he doesn't know how to do. Whereas you believe like Joan could pull any of it off. If you put her in a meeting with a client, she'd at least get this thing started. She might close that deal.
Oh, for sure.
And everything in between. So
Yeah.
I also love the energy of like, she was clearly the prodigal son returning. I didn't have any context knowing she was absent, but it was so palpable that like this was like, oh shit. Like I imagine the audience watching that originally.
Yes.
Must have whooped, right? You must have cheered when she.
Absolutely, because we thought she was gone. We thought she was done. She left the show and then she was not on, like she leaves and then she's not on many episodes. And so you think, I guess she's not on Mad Men anymore.
Yeah.
And that is something that the show does. Like sometimes characters leave and they do not come back. And so
that's cool.
Like, she's such a huge, like fan favorite, and Christina Hendricks is incredible. And so the idea that she could be gone was so upsetting to people. And then for her to pop up in the finale and then like take control of it was so exciting. As Don says at the end of the episode, he says like, oh, like he walks into the room and sees her there and he goes, oh, Joan, what a great idea. It's like, exactly. That's always how you should feel when you see Joan walk into a room. What a great idea.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff because this revelation is wonderful. And it's the only thing making me like a little bit disappointed that I went in blind to this episode, that I did not get like the full just joy of that moment. But yeah, like the Joan stuff is so timeless because I don't care where you work. There is a Joan who does not get the credit, who doesn't have their name on a door, who's the one who actually runs everything. That's certainly true at my school. I imagine it's true at places you've worked in the past as well. I was a journalism major. Yeah, that's like the first thing they teach you. You want a good relationship with secretaries, with office managers, not necessarily with the people with the big names, but the people who can get you access, the people who actually know what's happening. And just Joan communicated that before she even opened her mouth, before she even like proved through her actions. You could tell from her whole demeanor what was about to come.
She walked into that space and she already had a plan. She'd already contacted the movers. She already had a list of things that she knew needed to be done.
Awesome.
And on the Lane point, I want to briefly mention a line that I loved so much when they're trying to convince him to join the little rebellion of theirs. And he says, nothing good ever came from seeking revenge. And Bert, without missing a beat, is just like, nonsense, we'll make you a partner. Good things come from revenge all the time. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's my guy.
Great stuff.
All right. Well, this is Media Lit after all. We can't get out of an episode without saying, what other popular culture was on our minds as we watched this episode. We've certainly shouted out a few along the way, but Kris, I'm going to throw this one back at you first. What other pop culture was on your mind during this episode?
Thank you. So a couple of I'll keep this really nothing thematic, all just referential, really.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't help but, of course, think of Community as soon as Annie walked on screen. But there she is, and Henry, because I'm watching Once right now. But
Hmm.
Lane, this poor man, this poor actor Jared Harris, because he's been in some tremendous things.
Yes.
He has quite the career. He's a talented performer. He's Mac McGrath from Mr. Deeds to me. So Mr. Deeds, that 2004 Adam Sandler flick, was very top of mind the moment he was on screen because that's who he is for me, unfortunately. But then separate from those things, I just had heist stuff on the
Yeah.
brain, right? So Ocean's 11 is very top of mind as we were moving through this stylish, both the getting the gang together moment and the actual execution of the heist itself, right? Stylish music, stylish clothing, it all felt very much
Mhm.
like an Ocean's moment. But specifically in the gathering of the gang, especially as we began to highlight how different skills were needed, right? The initial three are established and they're all the same type, right? In the party, they all have the same function. But then we start to go out and we're looking for our niche roles to fill out
Yep.
the party. And in that way, it was bringing me to Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
Another favorite of mine, unapologetically, Nick Cage, Angelina Jolie, really an insane cast there. But really
One of the
similar,
most interesting hair choices of all time.
the blondie dreads for Angelina Jolie in that
Yeah.
film. Yes,
Yes.
it was a moment. But similarly, like such a well-defined aesthetic. We're in the Southern California environment, and it's all very stylish for its setting. And you have these ringers, each person who's really the one person you need who can do the thing that they do. So yeah, I was vibing on Gone in 60 Seconds, believe it or not.
Nice. It's perfect. Alex, how about for you? What other pop culture was on your mind
Yeah,
rewatching
I
this
this
episode?
this episode of TV is basically like if Ocean's 11 met Marriage Story, but it was set inside of the ice storm. So those
Whoa.
are my cultural references.
Marriage
Wow.
Story is a great pull. Yeah.
Is of course for people who don't know, obviously Ocean's 11, Kris already spoke to that brilliantly. And then Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach movie from a couple years ago, which is about the end of a marriage and the complicated relationship that these two people developed, and how it fell apart, and then how they chose to kind of build new lives out of the wreckage of that. And then The Ice Storm is this like great Ang Lee film from the late 90s, all about the sort of I think it's more about the 70s, but it always feels very Mad Men adjacent to me because it's about these sort of like suburban middle class people who just are experiencing this like existential malaise and are emotionally repressed, but trying to be different and be bolder than their parents' generation
Mm.
and mostly failing, and having that also refract through the younger generation of like young teens who are a core part of that cast and how it all plays out. So those are the three touchstones for me.
Mm. You hate to be in a malaise.
It's not the best.
No.
It's not the best.
Perfect stuff. For me, I'm just going to do like a yes and section because we already covered my favorite ones. I had not thought Marriage Story, but I love that. Fun fact, I've never watched that movie start to finish, but I
Oh,
feel like I've watched the whole thing in clips on social media. I
no,
feel
you
like I've
have to
seen
see
like
it.
every fragment of the argument. So you're making me that's where I was going. I was like, I need to finally sit down and actually watch
There's
this thing start
so
to
much
finish.
more to it than what
Um,
like Twitter did to it in 2019.
okay. Okay, thank you. All right. I vow to you, I will go back to Marriage
Scarlett
Story.
Johansson has never been better. I'm gonna tell you that
Mm.
much.
Perfect. I will say in the clips, I looked past the jokey nature of the prompts and I did see some real value to what was happening in the performances
Yes.
for sure. But no, we talked about, I brought up Marvelous Mrs. Maisel earlier. Obviously, that was on my mind. One of the other most stylish period pieces that I can think of. So would love to see Midge and Don on screen together just for a moment, just for the looks. They don't have to have a meaningful interaction. I would just love to see a little bit of overlap there. But the other one I wanted to bring up, it was Loki. Like, yes, we've got the DB Cooper shout out. They actually did the DB Cooper thing. But that is not the end of, I think, Don Draper comps to Loki on that series. You've got this character that is so good at building illusions and building a story about who he is. And in that show, he literally confronts multiple versions of himself, kind of like you were discussing, Alex, with Don Draper. And of course, we get the whole like mid-century modern aesthetic of the TVA and all that stuff. So yeah, Loki was surprisingly front of mind for me. It started with DB Cooper and the clothes, but it got a little bit deeper. So thank
Interesting.
you so
Good pull.
much. Absolutely.
All right.
Now, before we move on to our next segment, because I know where we're headed, I feel like I don't know yet how you guys felt about this episode, and I think that that's important for your listeners and for me personally, who put you on this journey. What was the experience like of watching this show without context? What was the like? How walk me through what you thought about these characters and this plot, and like things that you felt like jumped out to you as points that kind of were intrigued you or that kind of made you feel like, oh, I'm glad I never watched the show. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to put you into a situation where you have to be complimentary, but I'm very curious what your journey was through this episode of TV.
I'll just jump right in and say that I really enjoyed this watch. It sort of proved to me a lot of what I thought about the show in terms of the stylish nature of it, the vibe that you get when you're sitting back and you're watching it. It worked really well to set the table for like I want to know what comes next. Like I really want to
Yeah.
put on that next episode and see how this all will come to fruition for them. Right? Is this what they hope it will be? It's the beginning of a bold new era. It also made me interested to go back, right? Because there were enough things that I tried to watch this episode like it was a short story. I tried to decide, like, treat it as if anything important for this episode will be shared with me in this episode. And anything that I'm curious about, I'll just allow myself to fill in the blanks, not worry so much about what maybe came before. But then there were some areas where, man, I knew that if I knew what had come before, what I was watching would be
Yes.
so much more rich, right? And so it did make me really hungry to go back and fill in the blanks to start the show from the beginning and understand that conversation with Peggy and, why she needed a two-part conversation where nobody else did, right? There was clearly so much baggage there outside of the obvious need to fill in the background of the marriage situation. So,
Sure.
yeah, really enjoyed the watch. And it made me want to watch more. It's the best thing I could possibly say about it.
That's exactly what I wanted you to say. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to hear it.
No, I honestly, I love that you asked us this question, Alex. I think the reason I failed to state the obvious is because I felt like it was the obvious. Like this was such a thrill to go into the show. I mentioned earlier, I watched the pilot, loved it. There's that scene that I rewatch every year as part of class that I love. I've wanted to go back, and this only confirmed that. Not only was it the thrill of being reminded that Allison Brie is here, not only was it the Ocean's 11 nature of it all and the cool suits and all of that great stuff, but it also reminded me there's one relationship that you spoke to it earlier. I think it's one of the most fun moments of the episode when they go after Pete. Um, but in that first episode, like that's the dynamic that I've kind of been the most curious about in the back of my mind, because in that Lucky Strike scene that I love so much in the pilot, Don has his epiphany, ultimately, that you're trying to sell happiness. But just before that, Pete like confuses the hell out of the Lucky Strike execs because he's trying to reference this like groundbreaking psychological research suggesting that people have some kind of a death wish, and that the ad campaign should essentially like lean into the like, yeah, it's unhealthy, but who cares? Life sucks kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Like it's a little more sophisticated than that. And while it's clearly the wrong direction for the ad campaign, I was interested by that. Like I could sense the tension between them. And it led to maybe my favorite moment in the episode when Pete is just like, I want to hear it from him. I want him
Yes.
to tell me what my skills are. And yeah, there were so many things that made me want to fill in the blanks, but that might have been the biggest one for me personally. Is like, I want to see that rivalry, frenemy, whatever it is, kind of play out over time. For
It's a very
sure.
rich relationship, and that's and you're getting at like in that introduction to that character, it's so key because like trying to sell in 1960s these like old school like tobacco executives, the idea that
Hmm.
like Americans have this Freudian death drive that
Yeah.
makes you want to purchase things that are bad for you as like a way to deal with the fact that like it's come out recently that cigarettes cause cancer, right? Like that was never going to play with those people. But
Yeah.
what is also true, what we know from hindsight, is that he is, number one, correct. Number two, there will be very successful advertising campaigns in like 20 years in the future built entirely around that idea. So he is not wrong. He's just too early. And that is something that like we see that happen with this character many times, where he is kind of at the cutting edge because he is representing this new generation. And so that is a tension throughout his experience on the show, and that is something that in the episode that we watched, Don compliments Pete on, especially by saying, "Look, you were ahead on a lot of these things," and all of those things that he's referencing are things that we've seen on the show at that point. So it's a nice moment, but they have a very complicated relationship that I don't want to spoil for you guys, but a lot happens between the two of them.
I was very impressed with Don's humility in that moment. I thought we were going to have a toxic, like I'm not, and we weren't going to get him, but he humbles himself and he charmed him as he needed to be charmed. That was great. Well, now that we know that we both loved this episode and we're kind of hooked on the show, I want to talk specifics. Let's do favorite scene and or quote. So give us both, give us one or the other, but I want to talk about favorites from this episode. Randy, I'll throw it to you first here, buddy. What was your favorite, one or the other?
Sure. So I had some difficult choices to make here because I think my real favorite was Don's "You old men love building golden tombs and sealing the rest of us in with you" was my favorite. But I'm going to go to a runner-up. And it's another important scene that we haven't really talked about. It's another player we haven't dug into too much. And this is Don's appeal to Roger, where Roger, and his initial response is like, shit happens, whatever. And what he says is, "I've got stocks. There's a deck chair somewhere with my name on it." I now learned from Alex, if I heard you correctly, he suffered a heart attack in an earlier season.
In the first half of season 1, yeah, he suffers a heart attack. And they did that because initially John Slattery was just a special guest star on the show. And they were thinking they were likely going to write him out. And then he had so much fun on the show and they loved writing for him that they were like, "No, you actually have to be a main member of the cast."
Yeah.
So,
great.
But like I called Bert an MVP earlier, but like Roger also has to come to terms with what he wants his life to really be. Like, am I going to settle for what could be a comfortable but unfulfilling lifestyle, or am I going to be part of something? So that was another key moment, and like thematically, it built on top of all these others. So I'll go with that Roger moment.
And there's a lot of tension in there that you guys don't have full context for, that I don't know if it, like, what your experience of it was, but they like reference the fact that he and Don are not necessarily on the best of terms walking into that scene, right? Clearly there is resentment that like Bert mentions the fact that he is marrying that trollop, as he puts it. All of that is a reference to the fact that Roger left his wife in season 2 and married his secretary, which all of these people view as sort of a like unseemly choice by him. Like, you just don't do that. You sleep with your secretary, but you don't leave your wife for them. Because the secretary also is, 22, 23 years old, and Roger is obviously not. So it's very passé, but he seems truly in love with this woman, and that's something that they don't value for him at all because they think that it is unbecoming and embarrassing. So that is the context for why he's like, "You guys are coming in to me and telling me that you need me now after you've treated me like shit. You don't care. You told me that you don't care what makes me happy, and now suddenly you're like, if you don't do this, your life is going to be miserable," right? So that's all like the subtext around there that makes it very rich.
Love that. Very, very good. Man, I got to watch more of this show.
Yes.
Alex, what's your
100%.
favorite scene or quote from this episode?
I mean, it's really hard for me to choose a favorite thing inside of this episode because there's so many fantastic things in this episode. I would say, like, if I had to pick a favorite scene, though, it would probably be the scene where Don and Peggy say goodbye, or Don and Betty say goodbye to each other,
On the phone.
because of how understated it is. Like, this is like like Betty and Don are like the emotional like core of the show in a lot of ways. Like, this is the foundational relationship. This is like in every other show like this. It's just like this family, the state of this family is going to be a constant back and forth struggle, and like they're going to break up and they'll get back together and break up and get back together. And this show is really defining itself and distinguishing itself as something different by letting these people walk away from each other. And they do that. We see the ugly side of it earlier, but then they give them this beautiful moment of just like of saying goodbye without selling out the fact that there's still people experiencing this, right? So like they don't give like this long monologue where it's like, "Hey, I'm so like glad that we had this time together." Like Don tries to have a moment like that with her. He tries to say like, "I just hope you get what you wish that what you always wanted." And Betty won't give that to him. She just
Yeah.
shuts it down and just like, "Look, you'll always be their father, but like
Yeah.
what is underneath that is like we're done. And I'm
Yeah.
not gonna let you feel better. I'm not gonna give you catharsis." But also, in her denial, there is this tenderness still that speaks to their real connection and a real love that they have. And there's just so much nuance to that. And it's a scene where two people are talking on a phone to each other, not even sharing the same space. And I just think it's remarkable what they're able to achieve. So I would say that would be my favorite scene. And I would say my favorite line. There's so many funny, hilarious moments, but I think the most important quote here is the one where between Don and Sally when
Yeah.
when Sally says, "You're going, you said you'd never go," and Don says, "I'm not going, I'm just living elsewhere," and she calls him out on his bullshit, and that's just like
Yes.
because he just can't stop trying to sell the illusion of something even to his child in this moment where she just needs her dad, and I think that just says so much about both of those characters and about what the show is trying to get at. So,
Perfect.
the fun is in all of the corporate espionage stuff, but
Yeah.
the heart is in the families.
Perfect.
Great stuff. Really great stuff. And since you did the heart so beautifully, I'm going to keep it in the fun.
Yes.
But also I think really thematically important. I thought that this moment it was quick and it was funny, but it was also really emblematic of what I assume is happening at this moment in the show, which is like a shift, right? This is an apocalypse. This is the ending of one world and the beginning of a whole new world
Yeah.
for all of the characters who were involved. You mentioned earlier about the way in which the show is really, if it's about two people, it's about Dawn and it's about Peggy and sort of her arc through this world. There's something happening for women in the wider world, right? The whole landscape of the corporate world is shifting, and it seems like her character may be an avatar for that moment in this microcosmic way. So I just love when Roger turns to her and says, "Get me some coffee, will you?" She says, "No." She just realizes in this moment, like, absolutely not. I have the agency here to say, no. And he it doesn't rattle him. He looks taken aback for a moment, but he's kind of like, huh, yeah, that checks out.
Beautiful.
We're all moving into a whole new world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an incredible moment because also it's not just like they could have played that with any of the male characters, but the fact that it's Roger, like Roger is like the
Yes.
scion of this company, right? It's his father and Bert started this. So he
Mhm.
has always been this like trust fund rich kid. He comes in, he's in charge of being like the fun guy who wines and dines all the clients and he is like old money and rich. So he is the most like status symbol of
Yes.
Yeah.
status symbols right inside of that world. And he's sitting at that little table with them and is like,
Yep.
"Get me a coffee." And she's like, "No." And he's like, and then that's it. There's
Yeah.
no further discussion. It's just like, all right,
Yep.
I guess I'm not having coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's not the person who gets you coffee.
Yeah, she's
Perfect.
not the secretary, and she's finally done pretending like she's also because a lot of and that is something that it was a real journey for her where even as she was
Yeah.
putting her foot through that door and trying to be taken seriously as a creative executive in this company, she was still the woman in the room, and the men in the room would still oftentimes treat her like the secretary, even when
Well,
she was the one doing all of the work and her ideas were the ones that were being selling the campaigns.
You see it just a moment, I guess, earlier, right? Where Dawn shows up at her house and she begrudgingly asks if he wants something,
right.
Yes.
because she is like the host in the home at that moment. Like the polite thing to do for any
Mhm.
guest who comes in your home is like to offer them like a beverage or something. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
also
yeah.
feels like she's almost like resistant to the fact because that's like, that's the role
Yep.
that I'm supposed to be in. So
Yeah.
yeah, I loved the next scene where she gets to just say no.
And I don't have anything thematic to say about this, but just as a light shout out as we leave this section. Uh, my dad was a Bert. I celebrated Bert today. My dad was also a big Roy Orbison fan, so I just appreciated the well placed Roy Orbison needle drop to wrap up the episode. Added
Nice.
like a nice extra little layer of nostalgia for me. All right, folks, that does it for the traditional portion of the podcast, but we can't get out of a Media Lit episode without digging into the extra credit section. And we're going to bring back an old favorite. This is one of our favorite segments to do, but we haven't done one in a hot minute. And that is our Do You Ship It sequence. So, what I have done here is I've constructed 8 different potential ships that seem to click for me. Some of them were indisputably relationships we were asked to consider, and some of them were just either good or bad vibes that I caught. I might have put them down as particularly good ships or particularly troubled potential ships. But I'm just going to run through them quickly, and I'm going to ask Alex and Kris for their thoughts. And if they fail to cover any of the ground that I had in mind, I'll hop in and share a thought or two as well. But first up, we've talked about them quite a bit, but Don and Betty, Alex, you've articulated what this relationship is all about really well. But at the end of the day, do you ship this couple that does not stay together?
I do not, because ultimately they're drawn together because of a shared illusion of a life that they think that they're supposed to want. And so no true happiness can be found from that. Ultimately, it will always be empty. So I think these two work much better as exes, and I'm very happy to see them part ways.
Kris, how about for you?
Yeah, I echo Alex's sentiments completely based on what I saw in the episode and everything Alex has taught me today. I think that these are two people who are ready to move on to something else in their lives and will be better for it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insight, Alex. I'm happy to know that even though I was right to not ship this, I'm happy to know there was a slightly maybe better foundation than I read from those scenes. So that's comforting to know. All right, next up, speaking of things that Alex really educated us on today, I think I maybe caught the wrong vibes with this next one, but I did want to ask about Betty and Henry, because it does seem to at least be presented as an open question here. Is this someone she is already sleeping with, etc.? Alex, I'm going back to you once again. Do you ship it, Betty and Henry?
Yeah.
You said he was a pretty nice guy.
What I would say is at the end of season 3, I was aggressively not shipping these two.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like a real life couple where like you're
Mm-hmm.
really good friends with somebody and they meet someone and you're like, really? That's the person you want to be with? Okay. And then like over time you see their connection and you see what she sees in him and how he's actually like a stand-up guy like you want, and so then like over time you're like, okay, I get this, and actually maybe this is actually really good for her, so I'm glad that she has it. But the end of season 3, not shipping it at all.
Kris, how about for you?
Yeah, it was a no for me based on what I saw in this episode. And I also just felt that any person leaving one significant moment probably should take some time alone before they move into the next significant thing, right? But I'm convinced by Alex. I know far less than he does, and I trust his instincts. If
Yeah.
long term this is good for Betty, then so be it.
Yeah, same for me. And I was just really happy to learn that all of that like deep personal involvement in her personal divorce and business was not just a ploy to get with her. All right, next up, another established couple. We've got Pete and Trudy enjoying a fake sick day together. Uh, Alex, do you ship these two crazy kids?
I will always ship these two. I think they are so good for each other. I just love how Trudy makes him better, and Pete truly respects her. And I just love their partnership, and they are just like the future that I wish we could still live inside of. So I'm always happy when they're together.
Kris, how about for you?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, they look just like smitten. I loved the way she like sort of admiringly like pulls him in for a kiss after the other guys leave. She just sort of watched him have this meeting moment. She's proud of him and she's attracted to that. You can tell there's like,
Mhm.
yeah, there's like young love there that's so beautiful. But then you also observe the equal partnership, right? Society has certain
Mhm.
expectations for gender roles. And so she's gonna like excuse herself and she's gonna go do something else in the house while he has this meeting. But she expects that she has a voice with him.
Mhm.
Right? She expects that like, I'm listening and I would like to consult it before you go forward in this conversation. And like the fact that she does that suggests to me that she expects he'll be open to that, that they do have this
Yeah.
equal partnership, which was really beautiful. So hell yeah.
And
Yeah.
he does listen to her, right? Like he
Mhm.
does shit like that is all he needs to know. Like, okay, I'm going a little bit too far. I should
Mhm.
kind of rein it in a little bit. Like it does change what he's doing, which is a really fun thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was happy for Pete. I mean, this is Allison Brie at her most Allison Brie. She's bringing the Annie energy from Community, that earnestness. I've got sandwiches and just about anything you can think of for the team. But at least in this episode, it doesn't feel like it's being played up only for humor. There is that real heart underneath it all that I think you both uncovered very well. All right. I'm going to go to Kris first on this next one because I think it'll be more fun to hear what you think without additional insight from Alex. But Pete and Dawn, they've got this antagonistic relationship. And in a different world, they were different people. Do you ship it?
Well, let me just say in this world, the kind of guys that I would love to see forge that bromance because they
Mhm.
come from these different places, because of that contention, you would love to see them become like a really like dynamic duo, the kinds of guys you love to be around, to love to see when they're together. But let's put them in a different world. Let's say they have a physical romantic attraction to one another. Based on the contentious energy, they have to at least try it out in bed. Like they got to at least like maybe
Mhm,
get a little
mhm.
too far one night under drinks, and at least find out what's behind the tension. Is it tension for tension's sake? Is it tension that's hinting at something more? Is kind of where I'm at.
Beautiful. Alex, how about for you?
So while I am certain that on some corners of the internet, there is literature to support this fiction, I can't possibly ship it. It feels
Mhm,
honestly icky thinking about these two in a romantic context, because ultimately, like, it's very much like a big brother, little brother kind of dynamic
Hmm.
that they have,
mhm.
and it's just there's something interesting about that I don't want to see sexualized.
Perfect, perfect. Kris, I'm gonna go back to you again. I'm going through, Don and these male presences in his life. We got a little bit of like the tension and complication of this relationship from Alex, but how about Don and Roger for you, Kris?
I guess I can only approach it similarly, right? Like the contention. I guess if they were both attracted to one another, I'd be interested if that tension would lead to sparks. Is it friction that sparks, or is it friction that just creates heat and breaks both people down more than they were before?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I'm always a curious person, and I love when love wins. So I'm always one to try and give things a chance, I suppose.
Perfect. Alex, how about for you?
So when I first saw this, I was like, "No, gross." But then, like, I've been thinking about it more, and I'm like, "Yeah, I could definitely actually see this." There's a number of times where these two either have pretty sincere bonding moments or pretty sincere, like, tete-a-tete face-offs with each other, and in each case,
Mhm.
I think that they could be grounds for a very fun ship in a different universe for sure.
Yeah, I think what sparked the question for me was just this, "Oh, I thought I told you about that. I meant to, or I guess maybe I never was gonna tell you." Like, just that whole, "I care about your feelings, but I don't really care about them." There was this confusion in him that put this on the list. All right, again, this is another one that I'm seeing differently, through the wisdom I've acquired in this episode. But Don and Joan. Kris, what do you think?
Dawn doesn't deserve Joan.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it. That's the tweet.
Alex, anything to add?
I just that, like, Joan has no interest in a man like Don. She has no, and Don respects her enough not to put her through that bullshit. So, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Another one that I got some additional insight into, and I think I know the answer, but they spent some really serious and meaningful time together. So, Dawn and Peggy. Alex, what do you think? Do you ship it?
So, Don and Peggy are platonic soulmates,
Okay.
and it's that's who they are to each other on this show, and that's very important. And so, I don't ship it in any context, but I think that their connection is really, really profound. If you'd like, I can tell you a little bit more context for what
Sure.
they're alluding to in that scene where they're talking about like that. Do you understand something in me that I kind of that we share this thing that few people share. Over the course of and I wanna tell you this also because it relates to a ship that's not on here, and also
Yep.
another ship that is on here. Um, oh, in season 1, at the beginning of season 1, Peggy, ends up sleeping with Pete.
Okay.
They have a one-night affair. Pete has just gotten married to well, it's basically like Pete's last night before getting married to Trudy. he decides to like sow his oats and sleep with the new secretary, basically.
Yeah.
And then while feeling a little bit over the course of season one, disillusioned with marriage, he sort of fantasizes about running away with Peggy and like having this kind of, thing. While that's happening, Peggy is not really having their romantic connection is really weird after that. And
Mhm.
then ultimately what ends up happening is she finds out that she's pregnant, but she doesn't know that she's pregnant until she is in labor. You see her slowly start
Oh,
to gain
wow.
weight over the course of the season, but it's sort of kind of like alluded to the fact that like, oh, she's like working a lot and she's like doesn't care about her looks because she's like focusing on her job and like people are mean to her about it and stuff. And you just
Mhm.
kind of think like, I guess that's what's going on. And then you find out like, no, she's actually pregnant and she has this baby. And it's because she didn't even know she was pregnant. And it's the only time she's ever been with a man. And it's a married man who she
Oof.
works with and everything else. It's a very traumatic experience. Not the birth specifically, but just the fact that all of this has suddenly happened to her.
Yeah.
And Dawn is the person who, because she leaves work like very abruptly, like having some sort of medical episode that nobody really understands what's going on. She leaves work and Dawn comes and finds her in the hospital and basically says like, look, like you are not going to let this get in the way of the life that you want for yourself. You're going to put that baby up for like she puts the baby up for adoption. It's gone. Right. And
Mhm.
what he says to her is, this did not happen. It will shock you how much this did not happen. And he's
Mhm.
saying that because that's the life that he's led up to this point, right? He put a whole past version of himself in a box in his desk drawer and said that this person never existed. I'm this new man now. And so
Mm.
he is trying to impart this wisdom on her and is like, you can forge your own life now too. And so that is the connection that they have with each other. And he is the only by the end of season 3, he is the only person who knows that this happened, other than like her mother, who thinks that it's Don's baby, but
Mhm.
even though it isn't. Outside of that, no one else knows that this has happened, and so this is this dark secret for her that they share. And he's telling her in that moment, like, we understand something about the world that other people don't because we've had these experiences, and that's
Mhm.
what you've spent this whole season feeling like it's what makes you less than, but it actually is what makes you so valuable and what makes you matter. And like he's the only person who could say that to her, and she's the only person who can give that back to him in that same way. So that is their connection, and that's why it is so important. But that's why it also is not a romantic thing at all.
Yeah. Kris, hard to follow that up, but do you have any thoughts on Don and Peggy?
Um, no, no, I don't. My thoughts were similar. Like, I didn't want
Yeah.
this for
Yeah.
Peggy. Like, this is something that doesn't seem appropriate for their relationship, so I wasn't at all interested in it.
Perfect. Well, there's only one more ship that struck me in watching this one episode. But towards the end of the episode, Trudy comes in with her sandwiches and everything you could imagine. Um, at least the way I read this look from Peggy, it was just this look. I couldn't tell if it was like full seething hatred or just seething annoyance at Trudy and everything she stands for. It felt like hatred to me, or just like extreme annoyance. And I thought, could that just be the fire that lights a great romance? Kris, do you ship it?
The only reason I ship this is because as Peggy moves forward on her trajectory as a person who wants like real,
Hmm.
like she's a career person. She's a career-driven human being who has ambition. She has things she wants to achieve for herself in this world. And at this time in society, it may be hard for her to find a partner who's willing to support that, right? It may be hard for her to find a partner who's like willing to say support the home if that's what the home needs while she's busy running her career. And so, if there were a mutual attraction between them, I love Trudy as the kind of person who would love to love on and take care of the person that she's romantically acquainted with. And maybe Peggy finds the right kind of balance in a relationship with somebody like Trudy, who wants to be a little bit more of that traditional homemaker type of lover. So, knowing very little about either character, that was the best fabrication I could find for
Nice.
justifying a ship.
Perfect. Alex, how about for you?
So what I love about you including them is that it speaks to the fact that, like, there was clearly something happening between them that you could identify, but, like, it was there you had no context to understand it. But now you get that what was happening was Peggy was standing next to her ex-lover's wife who doesn't
Mhm.
know that she had a baby with her husband, and now this lady
Mhm.
is pleasantly handing her a sandwich in a hotel suite, and that is uncomfortable. So I
Yes.
think that's what she was experiencing in that moment.
Perfect. Alex, any ships I should have included on this list before we
Yeah.
close out
Yes.
the extra credit?
Uh, Roger and Joan are the canonical ship of Mad Men.
Mhm.
They started out as a sort of as an affair, like an on again off again affair that he had with her while she was in the secretary pool, and they had a beautiful sort of dynamic, and it was always sort of like, he's married, so I'm looking for a husband, so we're never actually going to be together, and that's okay because we're both adults and we're both sexy and cool, and that's fine. Right? And then, like, over the course of the show, that evolves and it evolves and it evolves, and, they are the canonical shipping couple, and absolutely, I do ship it and will always continue to ship it, and that's why it's so fun that he calls her in to save the day, why they're
Mm.
sitting next to each other. That's why they have that little moment where he, like, is bored, and it just is like, "What is this? I can't read your writing. What does it say?" And she's like,
Mm.
"My writing is perfectly clear. You know exactly what it says." And
Yep,
he just
yep.
wants to flirt with her because he's sitting and he doesn't wanna act he has to do work. He doesn't do work. So I'm just gonna mess with her. So that's like so they are the core, ship that I would
Beautiful.
absolutely include. And then there's the secondary of, like, the Peggy thing of, like, would you actually wanna see that be explored? I would not. I think they have a complicated relationship, and it's good that they're not together, but other fans might feel differently. And the last one that you don't have a lot of, from this episode, but I always kinda shipped Peggy and Ken Cosgrove,
Mhm.
who we see at the very end of the episode. He's like one of the main guys at who's been left behind at the firm, basically. He's the blonde-haired guy. And they have a very nice sort of like working relationship where he is like surprised how effective she is and like
Yeah,
started out not really taking her seriously, but being kind of nice, and then like realizing like, oh, actually, you're really pretty good at this, and then like
sure.
developing a good working relationship together that never felt weird and icky. And I always thought, in another world that could have been fun, but it is not. It was never to be for them.
Well, thank you, Alex, for taking us through the shippiest of the ships and taking us all the way to the
Mhm.
finish line there. I greatly appreciate it. One last little bit of extra credit we've got to do, though, before we close the episode. It's a Media Lit classic. We've got to talk about favorite props or souvenirs. And so, if you could have one prop or souvenir from this episode, what would it be and why? Alex, we'll go right back to you.
So there's only one answer, and it's an answer that you would have no reason to understand what it is or why, but it is absolutely the correct answer, and that is the chip and dip. The chip and dip is a little ceramic thing that is visibly present at Trudy and Pete's home. Trudy sets it down at the table for their meeting, and it is a very fun callback to an incredible episode of season one of the show, where having recently been married, Pete and Trudy, they had a registry at, one of the
Mhm.
big department stores in the city, and, that ended up that they they had as a gift, 2 people bought them a chip and dip, which a chip and dip is just basically like a little ceramic thing where there's, like, room for chip and a room for a dip, right?
Yep.
Um, and so he is very, like, kind of like, "I'm a new husband, and I have a little errand that my wife is sending me on," and he's, like, very excited about the chip and dip. He's trying to explain to his friends at work why it's such a cool thing, and
Yep.
everybody's like, "You're a loser," and they, like, fully emasculate him, and so then he goes to the department store, and instead of just returning it, he exchanges it for a little baby rifle, which then he keeps in his office the whole rest of the time, where he gets to play out his little, like, emasculated male fantasies. And you do actually see him while they're leaving the Sterling Cooper office for the last time. He is holding that rifle in his hand, and it doesn't no one says
Ah.
anything, but that's what that is. So he is what we are led to believe is all these years later, he has still not had the courage to bring it home to his wife, Trudy, who would absolutely not accept the
Mhm.
fact that he, exchanged the extra chip and dip for the rifle. But I would take the chip and dip over the rifle as a prop because, number 1, it's chip and dip. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you go wrong?
What's not to
Perfect.
love?
Love that.
Hmm.
Excellent, excellent. So much that we were missing in this episode, Randy. So
Yeah.
much. What about you, pal? What's your favorite prop or souvenir?
This is our first time playing the souvenir prop game in season 3, which means full rooms are on the table once again. If I did
Mm.
not already have a full Fantastic Four First Steps kitchen fueled by 1960s vibes, I might have taken a full room here, but I'm going to hold off on that. And instead, I'm going to take something very humble. I am simply going to take the fart department lettering to place on the door of my study in my prop cave because I loved that gag of the fart department, and it's perfect. How about you, Kris?
Lovely, very great pick, very randy.
Yeah,
I would have been shook if you went for a full room in the first iteration of this game in the new season. Shook.
yeah,
No, you know me, sir. It's always something sartorial.
yeah.
I was very tempted to ship to the rifle, having heard Alex's pick and all the context for that, but it meant nothing to me when I was watching it, so that would be false.
Yeah.
No, I want Don Draper's
Yeah.
suits, right? I want the suit that he's in as he's making these pitches. I noted the contrast between him and Roger, right? Roger is definitely the flashier dresser. Um,
Hmm.
his suits are a little bit more closely tailored. His pocket square is doing a fancy 4-point star rather than simply a straight across square fold. And I'm much more in line with
Mm.
Don Draper's sartorial taste. So still stylish, still well put together, still the appropriate width tie for the time, the appropriate knot, but just understated and classic. I really like Don's suit. So if I can, I would like to add the full look. You see him outdoors, so he's got the suit underneath, but then there's the ensemble of the coat and the hat to go with it.
Hmm.
Um, Gentlemen of the time just dressed quite sharply,
I
and I would love to bring that back.
I love that you chose clothes because it lets me have one last digression, which is number one, obviously, when Mad Men came out, a big fashion moment, right? I
Yeah.
remember like Banana Republic was selling Mad Men official line licensed suits and stuff like that. Like
Yes.
it like single handedly brought back the skinny suit trend, you know? But what people who don't watch the show might not realize is that the costume director is so thoughtful in how they put together this show from a wardrobe perspective. They make a point to, for instance, when it comes to say the like the receptionists in like the secretary pool, right? On any other show, they would just have a new outfit each episode because it's like, yeah, it's a TV show. Like we have a nice new outfit. On this show, the characters have like a set wardrobe of like like 7 to 10 outfits that we see them cycle through because they're like, you know, working secretaries in Manhattan. They can't have money for a brand new outfit every single week that we see them,
Interesting.
right?
Very cool.
For a character like Pete, there's this one iconic blue suit that he wears, and it's not anything particularly exciting. It's just the suit that he likes to wear when he has a big presentation to give. No one ever says this, but we know that that's how he wears that suit. And so whenever he's in that suit, it's because he is like, you know, excited for like a big meeting that he has or something like that. So they let this show feel like a really lived in place through wardrobe and those choices in ways that I've just like literally never seen any show try before. And it really helps you if you're like me and you watch the show over and over and over again, like lunatic. You really feel like it has this incredibly pure sense of place that is just so well thought out, and it like every detail is considered and is thoughtful and is part of the storytelling in a way that I just love.
Wow. Well, Alex, thank you for that last bit of context. Thank you in general for such a rich conversation. I never thought that I could learn so much about this show in just one chat, that I could feel
Yeah.
so connected to these characters after just one episode. So thank you for inviting us to watch this, and thank you for joining us again, as always, for a fantastic chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this. It's honestly my favorite thing to explain to people why Mad Men is actually the greatest show that ever existed. So thank you for giving me that forum, and I hope that your listeners enjoyed it as well.
And Alex, I'd like to echo Chris's thanks. I've wanted to get into Mad Men for so long, and this was such a good excuse to finally get a chance to sit down and do it and be educated by someone who I really appreciate. I am not someone who's really worried about spoilers. So at the end of the day, while I might have enjoyed the Joan reveal a little bit more if I had watched this naturally, I think now when I go back from the start, I think it's only going to make the experience richer to know where we are headed, to know what some of these big payoffs are going to be halfway through. And I have the added bonus of having the back half of the series to experience in real time.
Exactly.
You spoke a little bit to what's to come in the future, but you didn't really spoil anything too big for me in the back half. So perhaps we can get you back for another exploration of Mad Men at some point in the
Oh, like
future.
literally any time you want me to, I will be here.
Once we catch up, might be an incredibly good time. But Alex, you're the absolute best. It was the easiest outline ever to write because I knew you were going to only add value to anything I could dream up. So thank you so much for that. If folks don't already know where to find you, where else can they find you sharing your great takes and so often convincing me to see things in a whole new way or even change my perspective on a property?
Well, that's very kind of you, Randy. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Alex Marquez. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Media Thinkings. You can follow all the work that I do for the Pop Break by going to thepopbreak.com. Click on the podcast tab. You'll see all the shows that I do. Or subscribe to The Pop Break on all major podcasting platforms. Some of those shows include TV Break, which me, Josh Sharnacki, and Bill Bodkin host once a month. We do reviews. We talk about streaming war. We talk about the latest and greatest things happening in the world of TV that month. This month that we're currently in, we're going to be doing The Pit. Now, usually we do a new series spotlight, and obviously The Pit's not a new series. It's halfway through its second season. But I have yet to convince my fellow podcasters to watch The Pit, despite my urgings, and because I won our Emmy bet over the fall break, I got to choose a topic that I want to do even outside of our normal program. So I'm making them watch the first episode of Pit and seeing if I can get them on board. So we're doing that for the month of February. Also, with Bill Bodkin, I host Bill versus the MCU, which we are right in the middle of our Potting the Spider-Verse season 8 of the show, where we are talking all about Spider-Man for the next 8 months. It's going to be awesome. In honor of February, we're doing the most romantic of the series, which is, of course, the Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, the Amazing Spider-Man duology. So you can definitely check that out. And also over on my other podcast, It's Complicated, that I host with Manish Mathur, which is part of the Pop Break, but you can subscribe to that separately as It's Complicated on anywhere you get podcasts. We are about to do our episode on Onward, the Tom Holland, Chris Pratt Pixar film that came out back in 2020, because It's Complicated, Tom Holland podcast is a podcast all about the films of Tom Holland. We've been going through his filmography for the last year as we ramp up to his big month this July with both Spider-Man, Brand New Day, and The Odyssey coming out. So we're going to be talking about Onward. We're going to be doing that with the great Derek McDuff of the Underrated podcast. So you check that out and all of our previous episodes if you're interested.
Perfect. Yeah, all of Alex's stuff is incredible. And I just want to shout out, we are in the year of Avengers Doomsday. So if you want to hear some more of Alex here on Media Lit, you can go back to the spring where we did a whole Doomsday draft inspired by the back of chair names reveal. That was a lot of fun. And I'm curious to see how the concepts we pitched will, live up to what we actually see from the actual Doomsday film. So that'll be a blast, along with all of Alex's other Marvel content. We've done a Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack draft. So yeah, Alex is knowledgeable about everything, but this Marvel passion project, whether it is the focus on Spider-Man and Tom Holland, don't miss out on all of this stuff and all of his guest appearances. You will feel smarter. And I could not possibly encourage it more. Also, speaking of television, I hearkened back to our X-Files episode earlier today. We've got a special treat coming up for you in our next episode, which is going to be a return to the world of the X-Files. This time, we are going to be with the most incredible Scully cosplayer I have ever seen, who is also my co-star in a little Zoom drama reading of the original Severance pilot script, Zandra Michelle. So I cannot wait for you to see her pop on this pod, I'm told, in her full Scully gear. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a total blast. As for Media Lit as a whole, you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube. We're also on Blue Sky and still technically Twitter. And wherever you find the pod, you're going to find myself. You're usually going to find Kris, especially on Instagram. We'd love for you to follow the show first and foremost. We'd love for you to give us your feedback at media.slash.lit@gmail.com. But mostly, I'm just happy you're still here at the end of this 2-hour episode. And we hope that you'll join us next time. See you later.
Bye-bye, guys.